Hey guys, back with another video, an impressions video on Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, I finally got through this game. I think I said in a previous video I was gonna play through this game and do a video on it. It took me longer than I expected because I really got into this game. Probably more so than any other Final Fantasy game I've played. And you know what? Now, okay, Final Fantasy VIII, I guess we should immediately start off by saying that this is a divisive game in the series for sure. You always see people that completely shit on the game, and then you see people that absolutely love the game. It's very rare that you see people in between that think it's like okay. And going into it, maybe some people maybe expected me to hate this game or something. But honestly, yeah, I'm in the camp of love it. I loved this game. I thought it was fantastic. Not to say that there aren't things that bugged me about it, and we'll get into that, but this is the first Final Fantasy game where I've actually did most of the optional content. In fact, the only thing I really didn't do was collect all the cards for Triple Triad. We'll talk about Triple Triad later, but yeah, I did like even like the crazy stuff like killing Omega Weapon. Each Final Fantasy game has at least two super hidden optional bosses that tend to be harder than the final boss, and I did that in this game. It took me a little over 50 hours to beat the game, so I did quite a lot of optional stuff. If you were playing the game straight, just the main story itself, it'd probably take you around 30 hours, I would think. But yeah, I got really into this game. And I was surprised, I'll be honest, I was flat out surprised at how much I enjoyed this game. And most of that has to do with the gameplay. We'll talk about that later, but I guess first I should say, I'll put it in the description, but there's probably going to be spoilers, so I'm going to just say spoilers anyways, but because it's going to be hard to talk about this game in detail without spoiling some things, but I'll try not to. But, let's start with the plot, the story of this game. What starts off as kind of a simple, stop the sorceress kind of storyline. I mean, you play as Squall, and he's a part of this organization called Seed, and you start in this place called the Balam Garden. And the Seeds are like this mercenary, they're like these elite mercenary forces. And yeah, the story starts off as kind of a simple, you gotta stop the sorceress type storyline. And, even though it started off quite simple, there's a lot of like lore that you can kind of access in the menus. If you go into the main menu and under information, like different like descriptions will be added as you progress through the game. And I always liked looking through that thing, and it kind of gives you a better impression of the world. And I thought the world was actually really interesting in this game, and they didn't. It's actually not named, as far as I know. I don't think they ever named it, but the world is really interesting. In terms of like, it's like the world already like compared to Final Fantasy VII and actually earlier Final Fantasy games. This game is like I should flat out say first like that this game is fucking weird. I was kind of thrown off by how weird this game was. And how experimental it was. It's almost, it's like the world is very fantasy, but like it's very science fiction inspired as well. Hell, you're going into space later in the game, and that's like, I'll be honest, I have to look more at like plot analysis videos and things like that, because there's a lot of things I didn't quite understand about the story, and beginning at disc 3 and then disc 4, the story I think gets a little bit ridiculous for me. You get into like the time travel stuff, and that's where it started to lose me. And I don't know if that's a problem with the game per se. Time travel in general, I tend to tune out when any story has anything to do with time travel. I've never been a big fan of time travel in entertainment, in like movies, TV shows, and things like that. And I don't know, as the story progressed, I kind of felt it was like got less and less interesting. And so maybe I have to like read up more on it, but I don't know, overall the plot, I was invested. I cared about what was going to happen, and I liked the ending, but I don't know. Again, I got to read more on it, but I don't know. It didn't really blow my mind or anything like that. I liked the world more and some of like the lore going on. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about characters now. Again, I don't want to delve too much into the plot, but um, characters. This is one of the parts of the game that I wasn't too thrilled with. I thought the cast of characters was okay. Like after playing like Final Fantasy 9 and 7, like I don't think the characters in this game stack up to those games. Squall is a character that's hated on a lot. I think he's one of the big reasons a lot of people hate this game. I actually kind of like Squall. Now he starts off like very unlikable. Of course, he's like this introverted guy. Actually, an interesting thing with this game is the fact that you can see him voice his thoughts, which I thought that was that was really a really good decision. But he's kind of like an unlikable character in the beginning, but he really grows as a character, and by the end, I actually liked him. He gets probably, maybe him and Laguna probably are tied for like the most character development in this game. So I actually don't mind Squall, and I actually relate with him in a lot of ways too. So I mean, it was hard for me not to like him in some aspects. So yeah, he's actually probably one of my favorite characters in the game. Who else do we have? Like obviously, also this ties in with the story too, but a big focus of the story is the relationship with Squall and Rinoa, a romantic relationship. And I think this was the first time in the whole series that a romantic interest relationship had so much of a focus. And that whole part of the game just did not gel with me at all. And like mainly because it felt really forced throughout the entire game. And honestly, Rinoa, we'll get to Rinoa. I kind of hate Rinoa. Honestly, she's my least favorite character in the game. And it's mainly due to her personality. Like, her personality, I just did not like at all. Like, I don't know. I might get bashed for that. I don't know. I think she's probably one of the more popular Final Fantasy characters, I think. I don't know, but I just did not like her throughout the entire game. I didn't care what happened to her. And then, of course, you have, the romantic relationship there, which I thought was just really corny, really forced. And yeah, I don't know. Renault, I'm not a big fan of her, which made it all the more frustrating because I like Questus. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not Questus. She's not given a whole lot of character, but I still liked her more than Rinoa. And she has kind of like she looks at Squall as kind of like a little brother, I guess. But I don't know. Even with that, I still would have much preferred her being like the romantic interest. But at the same time, I also prefer something like Final Fantasy IX with Zidane and Garnet, where that wasn't forced and that wasn't in your face at all. It was done really tastefully in that game. In this game, I don't know. I did not care for it. The other characters, Zell, which is kind of like he's kind of like a comic relief character. I admittedly I laughed at some of the scenes, especially with any scene with him pacing around like an idiot. But there's not a whole lot to him, really. But I didn't hate him. I didn't like him either. But he did provide some moments of comic relief. Selphie is another character that is somewhat of comic relief, not completely. She has some interesting character quirks, but I'm not crazy about her. I don't know. I don't think she was given a whole lot either. So I don't know. I wasn't big into her either as a character. Didn't hate her, but I was kind of like indifferent, I guess is the word. Irvine, which again, another character that isn't given much. He's kind of, your ladies' man character. We see that character a lot in games. I didn't mind him so much, even though he's not given much character development. But yeah, he was okay, I guess. Laguna, which I mentioned earlier, which I liked the Laguna sections in this game a lot. Those were some of my favorite sections in the game. I just thought he was a fascinating character. And just, I don't know, anything to do with him I thought was really awesome. So yeah, Laguna is it might be the best character in the game. He's probably tied with Squall for me as far as my favorite characters. Trying to think who else. Is that it? I think that's it. I mean, as far as the main characters, there's some other like side characters, but damn, I feel like I'm forgetting someone. But I mean, I think that's it. Yeah. So I mean, overall, the cast of characters, I gotta say that it was okay. It wasn't like 13 where I hated most of them, but I think it's a better cast of characters than Final Fantasy X, which is the last Final Fantasy game I played. But I don't know, I wasn't too impressed with the cast of characters. I don't know, I felt kind of indifferent to a lot of them. And then Renoa, which I just flat out hated. So yeah, it wasn't really the story and characters why I loved this game so. It kept me going, and I was definitely interested to see where it was going to go. But it was the gameplay that really shined in this game for me. And it's also another point of contention with this game. I think a lot of people do not like the gameplay in Final Fantasy VIII. And in some aspects, I can kind of understand why. But I just loved the gameplay in this game. I haven't had this much fun playing a Final Fantasy game. Where do we start with the gameplay? I mean, generally progression is the same as like Final Fantasy VII or whatever. You've got your world map, which I loved. I thought the world map was really weird and interesting in this game, where it feels like it was like based on the real world, where you have like trains that travel from city to city, and you get on these trains and there's train tracks, and it actually even goes underwater at some point. The world map was just really interesting, and the world in general was really interesting. Like, the setting is awesome in this game, I think. But yeah, it generally progresses the same, going from town to town and whatever, going on your main quest. But I guess we'll talk about the battle system. The battle system is, still your, the ATB battle system from like Final Fantasy VII. It's just as quick as that too. You can set the speed, of course, but the main difference, of course, with Final Fantasy VIII, well, okay, first I gotta say this game is so experimental. They could have easily looked at the success of Final Fantasy VII and stuck to that and kind of made a very similar game as far as gameplay goes, but they just threw everything out the window and came up with the junction system. And then, of course, you have the drawing system and the GF system. These are like the three main systems, and they all kind of are intertwined. So the junction system, right, where you have to draw magic from enemies, and you can draw it throughout the world too, and say you can draw up to 100 of each magic. So you can draw 100 fire and fire magic, and you can junction the fire magic to one of your stats. And each character has like different starting stats, and they have their limit breaks too. We'll talk about that later. But like, obviously different stats are different magic types are better for different stats. Now this game, I guess I should say, like, this game is obviously known for being you're able to break this game really easily and very quickly too, and it's known to be very easy if you know what you're doing. And the junction system, it took me a while to get used to it, but you do eventually get used to it, and it's fun once you fully understand it. And yeah, I did break the game a bit, although most of it was due to Triple Triad. If you're willing to really invest the time into Triple Triad, then you can break the game for sure. I'm pretty sure there's ways to do it without playing Triple Triad as well, but the card mod ability basically allowed me to get the spell triple really early in the game, and junction that to your strength stat, and you'll be like one-shotting enemies very quickly in the beginning of the game. But yeah, you junction magic to different stats, and the stats will go up. You can gain access to really powerful magic early on, like the Kiraja spell, which is like the best healing spell, or single target healing spell in the game. You can get that early in the game, and if you junction that to your HP, for instance, that's a good magic for HP. Your HP will go up to like ridiculous levels in the beginning of the game. Enemies level up with you in this game. Bosses actually don't give experience, but enemies do, and so the enemies are going to be strong depending on how much you level up. I leveled up a lot through the game. I was like level 75 at the end of the game. But apparently you can do run-throughs of this game where you're like level 1 the entire game, which is kind of interesting. Like, there's so many different ways to use the junction system and make things hard or easy for yourself. And that's one of the reasons why I love the battle system, the junction system, so much. I loved just seeing what types of magic I could draw from enemies and just experimenting with all the different magics and junctioning them to each of these different stats. That was really rewarding. And then you have the GFs, which are your Guardian Forces, which are basically the summons in this game. And you can junction those to different characters. And they'll give like different stats and different abilities. So you can have like, you'll get AP points throughout battle. And each like summon has all these different abilities on this list. And if you were like, have like abilities selected that you haven't unlocked yet, you might need like 60 AP points to unlock this certain ability. For instance, the Encounter None ability, where you won't run into any random encounters in the game. So if you get 60 AP while you have that GF equipped, you'll gain that ability. And characters can, draw magic from enemies, which I guess I should talk about the drawing system. You're drawing magic from enemies as like an action command. And I've heard a lot of people bash on this because it can be repetitive, but I also know that some people, criticize this game for, constantly having to draw magic and draw 100 of each type of magic. And like, I can see if someone's kind of like OCD about that and needs 100 of every magic, but you don't need to do that. For instance, playing throughout the game, if I saw a new enemy, I would see what kind of magic that you could draw from them and draw a few amounts of a certain spell, and then I would just kill the enemies and move on. And I got through the game just fine like that. In fact, especially since you can get a lot of powerful magic from some of your GF abilities. For instance, you can like convert items into different types of magic, or convert like high-level magic into lower-level magic. Or rather, I think it's the other way around. Lower-level magic into high-level magic. There's just all sorts of different abilities you can get with these GFs. And the summons are cool in battle too, where they're kind of like their own character. Where you use the summon and they have their own HP bar, where the HP bar will show up and then a meter kind of starts trickling down. And once that meter is expended, then the summon comes out and the summon does its big crazy attack. And while that bar is kind of filling, then the GF can be hit with damage, and the GF can die. And there's like items for like reviving GFs and shit. Already I'm going crazy with detail here with the gameplay, because there's just so much to it. It's really kind of fascinating how experimental this game was. The summons are really cool. The animations are a bit too long. I wish there was maybe a way to shorten them or skip them, but it's cool seeing them all for the first time. It was really cool seeing Gilgamesh late in the game. I don't want to spoil that moment, but that was a badass moment. So yeah, the junction system, I'm probably missing things. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but it's really fun. It is easy to break, though. You can get, like I said, you can get high level skills or magic really early in the beginning of the game. What else? I guess there's also there's a weapon system in this game too, where each character has their own kind of unique weapon, and you can kind of upgrade this weapon with materials that you find throughout the world. Which is cool, and your weapons will get increased power, and I think you get like new limit breaks too with each weapon. So that's a cool system. I found it you have to find like these magazines too throughout the world to kind of learn new recipes of sorts to get new weapons. But I found it hard to gather a lot of the materials. I didn't get any of like the ultimate weapons for any of my characters. Like, I looked at what I had to do to get a lot of the items involved, and that would have just taken way too long for very very small strength increases. Limit breaks again return in this game. I really like how they're done in this game. I wasn't thrilled with it at first, and I can see why some people might not like this, where limit breaks will only happen if your characters are low on health. Later, and you get a spell called Aura, which allows you to use limit breaks when you're not at low health sometimes. But yeah, for most of the game, you can only use them when you're at very low HP. And unfortunately, because the game's so easy, I was never low on HP, and I generally in RPGs I try not to be low on HP anyways. So for most of the game, I didn't use my limit breaks all that much, which sucks because a lot of them are really cool, and each character has their own limit break. Squall has like a timing-based mini game he can do. Irvine's is a really cool, like Irvine uses guns, and he has all like these gun-based limit breaks. Questus has blue magic, which is cool. So yeah, it's I can see why they did the low health thing, because I guess they kind of looked at it as a risk reward type thing. Do you use your limit break and risk dying, or do you heal yourself back up? But I don't know. Later in the game, I did have to use them a lot more, especially against Omega Weapon. I might talk about that a bit later, but yeah, I thought the limit break system was fine. I can see how some people might not like it though, but yeah, I'm trying to think of other gameplay things. I guess we'll talk about Triple Triad now. Now, Triple Triad was one of those mini games that before playing this game, I didn't expect to get into it. I've heard of how obsessive people get over it, and how so many people got sucked into it when they were kids, when they played this game. So I don't know. I didn't get into any of the mini games in previous Final Fantasies. In RPGs, I generally stay away from mini games. But I thought, hey, what the hell? I'll give Triple Triad a shot, and I got addicted to it. For probably the first 3 discs, every NPC I found, I immediately started up Triple Triad. I was like, Triple Triad, bitch. Let's get. I want your cards. I was so into it. The annoying thing about it though is the fact that every time I lost, I just had to like reload my save, and that takes a while. Because I hated losing Triple Triad. There are some also annoying things about it. It's kind of cool that rules can be spread throughout different regions, but some of the rules are really annoying. Like fuck the random rule. Because I liked to amass like a huge card collection, so anytime the random rule would appear, I basically had to use all my shitty cards, and it was like almost impossible to win against some opponents. But I was addicted to Triple Triad. Like I loved it. I thought it was really fun, and it kind of feeds into the junction system, because you get a card mod ability off of one of your GFs, and with that you can turn your cards into magic or different types of items. And the Abyss Worm card, I got a bunch of those early on, as well as the Questus card and the Zell card. And yeah, I was pretty overpowered in the beginning of the game and throughout the entire game. The final boss, actually I guess I'll talk about that later, but yeah, Triple Triad got really into it. Easily, I think, the best minigame in any RPG. And yeah, the rewards for it are pretty great too, if you're willing to invest the time into it. I looked at some of the side quests, and a lot of them, yeah, you had to get like every card. So there's like a UFO side quest, which to get like one of the rarest cards in the game. I looked at that, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, in terms of side quests, like I said before, I did mostly everything. I did the Shumi Tribe side quest, which I loved that side quest. Well, not really gameplay wise. That side quest was annoying because like I had to use a walkthrough like pretty much the entire way through. Like I don't know how anyone got through that shit without a walkthrough. Like you have to like mash X like randomly throughout that entire village to find some of those items. Like I don't know, and they were in such random places. But that was a kind of cool side quest. I did the Deep Sea Research Center, which that was pretty cool. Killed Ultima Weapon there, which was not that difficult. He had that one attack, Light Pillar, that kills one of your party members instantly. That was pretty annoying, but otherwise he wasn't too bad. Omega Weapon, I guess we'll talk about that when I talk about the final dungeon, but I got all the summons in the game. I knew I had to do that, and some of them are just so fucking cool. Some of them were a pain in the ass to get, and I kind of sort of regret getting them. Doom Train in particular, which actually the footage I put up here is actually pretty much of me trying to get the items involved to get that summon. It's actually a very useful summon, but what a pain in the ass to get. But probably the biggest pain in the ass one to get was the Tonberry King. And that's another thing. I don't know how anyone figured out how to do that. You have to kill like fucking 20 or more Tonberries in the Sentra Ruins or whatever, and then it will appear. Like, who would sit there killing 20 of those? I don't know, unless you wanted to grind chef's knives, I guess, but I I don't know, but that was a pain in the ass to get, and he's actually kind of useful too. Um, I like two out of the summons were useful not only in battle, but for their abilities outside of battle as well. Um, so yeah, I got all the GFs. That was cool. Um, I guess gameplay wise, we'll talk about the final dungeon. The final dungeon in this game, I have to make note of it because it was so fucking cool. It reminded me of Resident Evil 1, actually. Just the location and the puzzles in there. And it was, I don't know, there's a cool gimmick I don't want to spoil, but it was a very cool gimmick. I thought that was really interesting. A very epic final dungeon, too, that has a very epic final boss at the end as well. And the Omega weapon's in there as well, which is like the hardest boss in the game. And this boss, it took me at least, I want to say at least 10 tries to kill this boss. I had a hell of a time. And I was talking to Mr. RPG Crazy, and he was saying that, oh, you can just use hero items. And I had a couple of those items, but I didn't know you could get a Laguna card, and that can give you 100 hero items. And this item basically makes you invincible for like, I think like a minute or so. And yeah, that fight would have been absolutely ridiculously easy with that hero item. But yeah, I had to go without that, and some of his moves were just ridiculous. He had a move that would bring all your characters to like 1 HP. He had that one move that did like 400 damage, like 4,000 damage bursts at your characters. And if you didn't use like the protect spell on your characters, you were flat out dead. But yeah, that was just like this really difficult fight that took me so many tries. Probably one of the hardest bosses I fought in a video game, but it was very rewarding to finally take it down. And I'm surprised I even bothered. Like, it was crazy how much I got into this game, doing all the side quests and shit. And just really getting into the junction system. Like, so much time spent in the menus in this game, but I loved every second of it. Yeah, each battle, the battles were really fun too. And you know, I can understand people saying that the game is just too easy, offers no challenge, and it's boring as a result of that. I can understand that. For me though, it didn't really bother me too much. The drawing system didn't bother me too much because it didn't really draw all that much, or I didn't really need to. But yeah, what else? Yeah, final dungeon really awesome. Beat Omega. Yeah, I guess that's it in terms of gameplay. But yeah, very experimental, and I really loved it. I really dug it. Visuals. We'll talk about the visuals because I think the visual style is very interesting in this game. Obviously, compared to FF7, they went with like realistic proportions on the characters, and I thought that was a good change. The characters are very expressive. There's some good animations. There's some bad animations too, but the game just overall has like a realistic look to it. But at the same time, like I said before, it's got like this science fiction-esque setting. And some of the locations you visit later in the game are really fucking cool. Like the environments overall in this game are just stellar. They're just amazing to look at. Beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds. There's like these weird, like you got like these, I guess it's CGI scenes that apparently were really impressive back in the day. The opening cutscene, everybody just lost their shit over that cutscene back in the day. I still think they hold up today. Yeah, although there are these weird sections where you've got like the character models, like the polygonal character models, over the CGI, and sometimes like the pre-rendered backgrounds will transition into the CGI, and you still got your characters running around. It's really bizarre, but it's kind of a neat effect in a way. But yeah, visually, it's probably one of the best looking games on the PS1. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously dated, but I still love the look of these old, these PS1 RPGs. Audio-wise, the music is phenomenal. Like, it might be my favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack. Like, maybe it's probably tied with 7. Like, I loved pretty much every track on here. The Man with the Golden Gun is probably my favorite. I wish that was like the main battle theme, but I guess it fits Laguna's sections more. The only song I didn't like, which is actually probably one of the more popular songs in the soundtrack, is "Eyes on Me," the song with vocals in it. I don't know. I thought that was a really cheesy song, and it's really cheesy. The moment it plays at is really cheesy. I don't know. Did not care for that song, but you know me. I'm not really into vocals in songs, at least in video games. But every other track I fucking loved. the game also is like very atmospheric, and the music helps create like a very moody atmosphere with this game. And I was reminded of Parasite Eve and Xenogears quite often playing through this game. Sometimes you'd swear it wasn't even it wasn't a Final Fantasy game. Like that's how experimental and weird this game is. And I like the weirdness. I gotta say, I like the weirdness, and the soundtrack really reflects that too. There's some weird tracks in here too, but most of them are just very moody and just. I know. I really love the soundtrack. It really. I mean, I'd heard it was an amazing soundtrack, but yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, Final Fantasy VIII, it gets a lot of hate. Maybe in some ways it deserves some of that, but I loved the game pretty much from start to finish. Mostly for gameplay. I think it's like my favorite gameplay in the series. I certainly think it's a hell of a lot better than Final Fantasy X. God, it's amazing how much more I enjoyed this game over Final Fantasy X. But yeah, I beat the game not too long ago because so I just wanted to get this video out here on like my impressions right after beating the game. But I do think I got to think more on the plot and the themes more and look at the plot analysis, some plot analysis videos because I feel like there's some of that I didn't quite understand. So that's why this is an impressions video and not a review. I don't think it's fair to completely shit on the plot, but I do think it's a little. I don't know if convoluted is the right word, but it was a bit much for me overall, I think. But yeah, that's it, guys. Yeah, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.